Chess.com just finished a pretty big 2-day-long bullet tournament that had a final knockout to determine the online Bullet King. Traditionally, Bullet is known as 1 minute for both players and no bonus time. That's different than the Speed Chess Championship, which has 1 minute and 1 second bonus time. I'm going to take you through 5 games against Hikaru's biggest rivals, NIHAL SARIN of India, PENGUINGM 1 or Andrew Tang from the United States, Vladislav Artemiev, Danielnaroditsky, and of course, Alireza Firouzja. We're going to kick things off with a game played in the preliminary stages of the event, and through all of these games you see timestamps. There's going to be the time there right next to the player names, just to show how creative, aggressive, and a little bit lucky you need to be the Bullet King of the world. Knight f3 from Hikaru to kick things off here against NIHAL, and d5, d4, and NIHAL goes for a Taraj defense. Now, some of you might not enjoy this video. I'm just going to quickly tell you that right now because they're playing 1 minute chess, but the chess is amazing and it's very tense and it's a lot of fun, so just bear with me. So we get e3, and Hikaru likes to go for these kind of simple positions in Bullet where you can develop your pieces very naturally and not waste a lot of clock time. You see the players are at 55 seconds apiece. Bishop d6, castles, castles, and bishop f3. Delaying the development of this bishop, potentially it will go like this. And in positions where there's an isolated pawn, watch my video on pawn structures, white wants to control the square in front of this pawn, and then long-term trade-off pieces and put some pressure on d5. So we get bishop e5, knight ce2. It's all about controlling that square. You need a piece there. You don't want to end up, with a pawn on the d4 square, because then you block your pressure on the opponent. So knight ce2, h6, Hikaru plays g3 in order to potentially slide this bishop back here in certain positions. We get rook e8, b3, and like I said, the bishop will go to b2. But NIHAL started pushing forward here with the queen. So Hikaru pops his knight out to f4, and that puts pressure on d5. And so that also hits the bishop here, and it forces NIHAL to trade. This leaves Hikaru with a long-range dark squared bishop, so now he's got dominance on the dark squares. Rook d8, and he plays rook e2, slow improving move, queen g6, and now finds the moment to take on c6 and leave NIHAL with an uncomfortable decision. Does he play queen takes and allow the queen to come here, threatening a mate as well as this, or does he take with the pawn? He chooses to take with the pawn, leaving himself with an isolated pawn on a7 and queen d4 all the same. The bishop comes back to g4, and we get a trade. But notice now Hikaru's got a 4 or 5 second lead on time, and every one of these moves is coming within half a second. Rook e1 comes with 1 second, and now NIHAL spends 4 seconds on a move, and he's down 7 overall. We get f6. So what do you look at here? Like, what do you do if you're Hikaru? How can you improve your position? You can go back for a second, threatening the move pawn f3. That makes NIHAL run away, and now we get bishop a3, a slow improving move of the position. NIHAL plays the move f5, locking in his knight, so Hikaru kicks the knight out, and now finds a very nice move with his rook. Doesn't rush with the trade. Oftentimes you should keep the tension as long as you can control the file, and he plays rook e7, and this is a problem. Notice the clock, 12 seconds up, and he's pressuring NIHAL. NIHAL has to drop his queen back, and Hikaru just calmly keeps the tension. He doesn't spend too much time on this move. He plays bishop back to b2, right? So we get rook e7, and NIHAL goes for rook e8. This allows Hikaru to accurately, very accurately, at the right moment, trade off his bishop for the knight, because NIHAL cannot take, as the bishop would move, and now we get a position like this. Down 13 seconds on the clock, and you've got pawn islands everywhere. Islands of pawns. They have no neighbors, and they're standing there waiting to be targeted. Now, Hikaru plays rook e8, queen e8, and queen f5. The most important thing when you are trying to get a pawn up endgame is to avoid falling into a perpetual. NIHAL can come down here and give you checks, but your king will go for a run. And notice, Hikaru does not take on f6. Why? Because he wants this move to come with a check, so he can continue to bully NIHAL's king. If queen f6 happens, NIHAL gets to make a move, and it's probably okay for white, but a little dangerous. Force the black king to move to a square where it will be check, and that's exactly what Hikaru does. Then king g8, and another very calm check, because again, had NIHAL gone to e8, queen c6 would have come with a check. So we give another check. NIHAL has to play a move. Queen h6, king f7. And now, with a 13-second time lead, you need to be careful of perpetual and find the annoying checks to make your opponent keep moving. So we get queen h7 and king h4, such a tricky move. There is no check now that you can land on the white king, and now you start giving the checks. You've baited the opponent to push the pawn, and you laser beam it, you win it immediately, but first you give this check, because look at this trick by Nihal. If you take here, you get mated. You're up 3 pawns, but you get mated. So be very, very careful. Use your time wisely. Queen e5 check, and now queen e6 check, queen d7, queen d6, giving these menacing checks to make Nihal burn clock time, and finally, taking the pawn with a check. Nihal shuffles desperately, and the easiest way to convert this endgame is to get the queens off the board. Find a way to trade them, and that's exactly what Hikaru is able to do. Laser beams it, and the reason he didn't do this earlier is because Black's pawn would have promoted, a clean technique of 15 seconds on the clock nearly, and this is how Hikaru knocked off Nihal SARIN. In the next game, we look at Hikaru's biggest rival, arguably biggest rival, and that is Penguin GM1, maybe biggest rival besides Firouzja, but definitely a top 2. Penguin GM1, who's also one of the only Grandmasters in the world who is signed to an esports organization. So Hikaru plays this game in very aggressive fashion. This is also not in the knockout. And you see, it's kind of like a King's Indian Benoni structure, and Andrew Tang always plays knight e2 and some sort of like f3 kind of unique system. So Hikaru takes, plays knight e7, and because his knight is not committed to fighting against the h-pawn push, it's down here. We get h4 from Penguin and h5. And Hikaru, very bold, playing f5 without castling, although he literally castles on this next move directly into the open file of the rook. Not the most pretty position if you plug it into a computer, but that's why you don't plug it into a computer. Queen e8 sliding out of the pin, Penguin chops, Hikaru gets the knight out of the way, ef5, bishop f5, and Penguin goes for opposite side castling. Now, you'll notice that Hikaru's got a very nice bishop. This king does not have a lot of open squares. In fact, it has none. It's completely boxed in. And Hikaru plays the move knight e5. This move threatens knight to d3 check, which is devastating because you'd have to lose your queen. So Penguin plays knight g3, opening the door for his bishop, defending this, and also hits this bishop. Hikaru knows this bishop is the key to the game, but here Penguin lashes out with a beautiful move f4, hitting the knight, and Hikaru cannot come forward. Putting the knight out on g4 is okay, but then the knight could get into e3, but then it can get pinned to the queen, and Hikaru here plays knight f7, eyeing this bishop, blundering the move f5. I'm not really sure what the players had missed here, because the bishop is trapped. I mean, maybe they thought that there was some sort of tactics like f5, the queen gets out and potentially hits the knight, but here Penguin just hesitated and slid his bishop out of the way, and this was all Hikaru needed. He immediately plays knight to b4. Now there is still f5, but it's somehow not so clear anymore, because the threat could be to play bishop takes c3. So if queen takes, knight takes a2, and if bc, well, yeah, I mean, that's chess. And the other thing is now f5, bishop h6. So when you play f5, you've relinquished control of this diagonal. My bishop can punish you on the diagonal and you lose the queen. So Penguin on knight b4 played the move a3. And here Hikaru uncorked a beauty. An absolute beauty, playing on the poor coordination of White's position. Queen a4. You cannot take the knight because of check and mate, and you cannot take the queen because knight to a2, and this king, with no squares to breathe, is checkmated. Now here, the engine was claiming some wild stuff. It wanted to play f5 because this is no longer a concern. Why? Because black has a hanging queen too. Yeah, but queen a4 is the kind of move you go, oh my god. Notice that Penguin spends 6 of his seconds and plays bishop e2, and after bishop c3, the game is just over. It's just over. It's over because b takes c3, queen takes a3, and you're breaking in. If queen c3 had been played, for example, there could have been knight a2, king d2, and you can just take the queen, and bye-bye, right? So that didn't happen, and instead in the game, we got bc3, queen takes a3, queen b2, and knight a2 check. And the king is pried away from the defense. King d2, queen b2, and penguin resigned. Hikaru up 20 seconds on the clock when the game is all over. So with these two wins, and several others, Hikaru was able to qualify, obviously, for the knockout, and his first opponent in the knockout was Vladislav Artemiev, who's 32-35, a gangster rating. Now, this game is going to be a fun one, because it's not what you expect, okay? It's not what you expect. I promise it's not. It's actually so much that you would not expect it that I had the wrong game put in, so I had to flip the games, and this is a new edit. Don't tell anybody, okay? It'll be our secret. So, Hikaru started the game with knight f3, and very similar to the other games, he goes for a very calm, solid setup. Knight c3, bishop g7. Really, the spiciest portion of this game began in the middle game, when Hikaru began advancing on the queen side. Artemiev played rook d8. Notice that Hikaru's already built up a 7-second time advantage, and we get rook d1, a5, rook c1, and queen e8. A lot of just jostling and maneuvering here. In a position where the players have 8 pawns aside, there's going to be a moment you can break through and make something happen. We're just waiting for that moment, right? So we get bishop a3, rook c8, bishop d6. That makes Artemiev go here, and Hikaru trades and plays c5. Now this pawn is on an island, so maybe we're going to get b4 and rook b1. But Artemiev makes things happen right away. Breaks in the center, and then chops down the center, and plays rook e8. He then plays knight to h5, and is ready to play something like knight f4. This is a problem, so Hikaru plays g3. You can push a pawn in front of your king like this, as long as your king is pretty safe, and controlling the squares of your opponent's pieces. Knight goes back to g7, and Hikaru starts chugging away at the queen side with a weakness on b7. Rook c7, a5, and knight b3. I mean, the pressure here cannot be understated. This is a terrible pawn. It's completely blocked out from movement. And after knight e6, rook e1, I mean, how is black ever going to move away here, right? But Artemiev is a really creative defender. Watch what he does. He slides the queen a little bit forward and suddenly has an eye on the f3 square. Knight g5, knight e6 is coming, and Hikaru is forced to jump in on b6 first, but then when this trade happens, he plays rook a4. And the point of rook a4 is to meet knight g5 with a quick capture and potentially cover the g2 square, because, I mean, there's just tricks everywhere, it seems here, like knight f4, for example. So Artemiev plays knight c5, and during the game, Hikaru was like, oh my god, I blundered. But somehow, it's not so simple. He gives away the knight for the rook, but this pawn is still a problem, and both pawns are going down the board. And his king is completely safe from checks. So what does Artemiev have to do, right? Down 4 seconds on the clock. Queen e7 first, a6 takes, and rook b8. Solid defense. Queen takes a6, and now Artemiev plays a tricky move. Rook b1, monitoring the pawn from both directions, threatening to potentially sacrifice, and his queen can come in the future. Not right now, but on some of these squares, he moves the rook out of the way for the queen to enter. Hikaru takes on c6, and that's all Artemiev needs to slide into e1. Now Hikaru here starts running away with the king. Notice the time situation. Artemiev plays queen f1, forcing the king out forward. Queen takes f2, he's getting closer. Queen c8 check from Hikaru if take, but Artemiev says, I don't have to take. King g7. He takes the rook, now we give a check. If the king comes back this way, Artemiev plays queen f5. If the king goes down here, we got this. If the king goes up, there's this. So Hikaru's got to play g4. Down 5 seconds on the clock, in the face of mate. But rook b3 is not possible because the knight covers. So Artemiev has to find the right sequence of checks. He gives the check on f1. He gives beautiful g5 move, sacrificing a pawn to force the king to come closer, because king g3 will be met with some sort of queen g1 and like checks here and there. But Hikaru does have king g3 here to potentially escape, because rook b3 is not possible. But he plays king h5. Down 8 seconds on the clock nearly. Actually 7. I can't do math. 7 seconds. Artemiev plays queen h3, king g5, queen h6, king f5, and doesn't give mate. He just doesn't give mate. It was his moment. He had queen f6 mate here in one move, and he missed it. He missed it. Instead, he saw a variation where he wins Hikaru's queen. But Hikaru all of a sudden, with a new breath of life, rook a8, and his king, despite being stuck in the center of the board, he's gonna get a new queen. There is no way for Artemiev to give him a check. So Artemiev runs away with the queen, Hikaru makes a new one. And then Hikaru runs the king even further. And Artemiev here, with 9 seconds on the clock, begins to panic. He's like, what is going on? And rather than giving a check, he panics and plays rook d1, and that's all Hikaru needed. We start hunting down the king. King g5, queen e5 check. And rather than anticipating rook g8, Artemiev played king to h4 and hung mate in 1. One player found mate in 1 when it happened, and the other one could not. Queen h5 mate, this is sometimes what you need to happen in Bullet. Bullet is craziness at times, and sometimes you need a little bit of luck, and that is exactly what occurred in this game. Hikaru's king marching confidently up the board. I told you, it's not necessarily going to be perfect, but boy is it going to be exciting. Hikaru qualified to the semi-final to play against Daniel Naroditsky. Daniel Naroditsky, to me, top 5 bullet player in the world. He's 34-14 on chess.com, okay? Well, what more to say? Players began with, again, Hikaru going for his patented, and Naroditsky trying to mix things up here. And I think at this point, by the way, the score of the match was 2-2 or 2.5, 2.5. Very close. We get knight d4, bishop f3, queen c8, and nothing special until Naroditsky fires out in the center with d5. A quick swap of all the pieces occurs, and rook c1. Rook c1 is pinning the knight to the queen, and we have pawn to b4. We get e5 from Naroditsky, knight b5, and here it looks like you're going to have a useful discovered attack, right? Because the rook is going to see the queen. Naroditsky plays e4. Everything seems to be falling apart. The bishop is hit. The bishops see each other. The bishop is going to move, and it's going to attack the queen. So how does Hikaru hold it all together? Bishop g4. Danger levels. Yes, there is a hanging bishop. Whoops. Yes, there is a hanging bishop. But this bishop hits the queen. We get bishop sliding back to e6, opening an attack. But we get this, and the glue. Bishop d4. Your bishop was hanging, and your queen was hanging. And Hikaru, in how much time? 2 seconds, finds bishop d4, holding it all together. Now the position is balanced. Naroditsky plays rook c8, queen e2. Now the knight can jump in, and I'm kind of surprised why he didn't. Maybe he didn't like some bishop g7. He didn't like... Actually, I'm not really sure. Knight d3 here is an exceptionally natural move. Maybe he didn't like rook takes rook and knight takes pawn, right? So we get a6, and now Hikaru finds bishop takes g7. So if a takes b5, you're going to bring the bishop back, and the king is going to be really weak on that side of the board. So we get this, but now the knight replaces the bishop, and it hits the queen, and now we have b4, and the rook is pressuring, and this is pressuring, and the pawn structure is a bit symmetrical, but queen f6, but now rook c4. Hikaru is playing a little cat and mouse here. He baits Naroditsky into playing the move b5, hitting his rook, but now the knight has no guard. Now the rook slides back. Why to c2? Because you want backup. Knight d3, and this knight's only guard is this pawn, so Hikaru plays the very nice f3 in half a second. Now if you take, there is this. Who's going to guard this? And who's going to guard the queen? And who's going to guard the knight? We get rook c2, queen c2. But again, who's going to guard everybody here? We get queen e7, and Hikaru plays queen c3. Eyeballing the king, constantly creating threats. Here, king g8 was possible, but we get queen e5. Why do we get queen e5? Because knight c6 is also a threat. There's threats everywhere, it seems. Everywhere. Knight c6 is a threat. And you go, why didn't Hikaru play knight c6 in this position, right? To hit the queen in the... What's it called? To hit the queen in the rook. Because there is rook c8. And if you take... I take you. And if you sidestep with a check, I'm going to block. So Hikaru plays queen c3 with a lingering 3 threats. And Naro has to solve all of them. He spends 8 seconds to play this move. But after f takes e4, there's a very big problem. Who's guarding the knight? Who's guarding the knight? If the knight tries to, get out, there's tactics on f5, right? Because the threat is knight f5 check, and the queen has no guard. And so he takes, and still knight f5. Hikaru finished this game with like a 99% cap score, 8 seconds of extra time, 0 mistakes, 0 blunders, and 0 missed wins. He found the chance to take his win, created 3 problems for Naroditsky to solve, and won it immediately, and this was one of the many games that he won in the semifinal to qualify him for the final, but it just shows you how he's constantly pressuring on the clock, on the position, and creating threats and problems in your position that are lingering. And with this, we will come to the final game, which I accidentally spoiled here a little bit of. You'll have to forgive me. The game that he played against Firouzja. Now, this was a tense match. Look at Firouzja's rating, 3388. Damn it. All right. Well, I'm talking about some of the best players in the world. And by the way, if you watched this far and you're wondering, where's Magnus? I don't know. Call him up. He was invited. Okay? Nobody's excluding Magnus. He just didn't play. This was an insanely tense match. Firouzja with the white pieces plays kind of in Hikaru style. He's playing what Hikaru likes to play. The players were developing, and then finally here Firouzja went for the patented. You got the two bishops staring this way at the king, so what do? Knight to e5, a nice central square for the knight. Then we play a4. I combined a3 and f4 and said a3 and f4 pushing forward. Knight to f5, Hikaru reroutes, tries to get in this. This is a beautiful, beautiful controlled square. Queen f3. Hikaru plays queen b6, trying to create counterplay on this square. Firouzja slides back for a moment, understanding this is important, and maybe he will build up with the pawns. Hikaru chops off and plays knight g4, securing control over e3, hitting the rook. Firouzja plays rook fc1 because he gets it. He's got to defend this threat. And these knights, they're kind of tripping over each other. Hikaru plays bishop b5, looking to trade away the bishop. Firouzja says, I don't give a damn, g4. Take, let me drop this knight in here. G takes f5, knight takes a1. I need that knight, but when you play rook to c2, I got a weak bishop. I don't need this bishop. The king is more important. I'ma hunt you down. If you take, pawn takes, queen g5, get mated. So Hikaru plays the only move in the only move that does not lose the game. The point of h6 is to prevent this. The difference is that if you take, I can now hide on h7, which is all I need. I need to hide away from the diagonal check. He finds the only move, and here he finds the trickiest option, g5, attacking the queen. All of a sudden, this king who was suffering and about to fall apart, rook g1, and now Hikaru plays rook f c8, creating a lingering threat potentially of rook to c1. It put the pressure on Firouzja here to find the only way to win. How does he do that? He had to play queen h4, laughing in the face of the pin here, so you can't take the queen, and queen h6, and if king to h7 to guard, rook comes down on g5. That's what would have happened. Rook g5, queen h6, and you get in. But Firouzja played knight f3. And that was all Hikaru needed. King to f8, let's time to run. Knight takes g5, h takes g5, queen g5, king to e8, we run in. Queen g8, king d7, queen f7, king c6, queen e6, king b5, queen d5, king a6. Oh my goodness, we have abandoned the house. The hurricane destroyed everything we own and care for, but the king is safe on a6. But Alireza Firouzja is a 5 damn pawns. He's a 5 pawns. 5 pawns. It's in the thumbnail for a reason. f7 he's pushing in. Hikaru takes the bishop. Rook f1, rook cc2, f8 queen, and the blunder of the game. Rook h2, king g1, and queen to g6. Alireza Firouzja up 7 points of material, gets checkmated. What could he have done rather than allowing this? It's not so simple. I mean, rook f1, rook c2, how exactly are you stopping rook here? Hikaru was just in time. Maybe here Firo should have considered something different. Or maybe Hikaru just saw 14 million possibilities like Doctor Strange and just saw one where he was going to take the bishop at the end of all this. Maybe Firo should have been patient, played the move bishop to a1. But an incredible game where Hikaru's king traverses the entire board, camps out on a6, and his pieces do the damage, winning the game and going on to win the match against Alireza, claiming the Bullet Open Championship. My friends, before we sign off here, what dollar amount would you pay to watch Hikaru versus Magnus in 1-0 Bullet? I'm not sure it's ever happened offline. It's definitely never happened online. Oh my goodness, wouldn't it be epic?